Okay, so what if our reality wasn't this big struggle between good and evil, but a high-stakes war between information and disinformation? Today, we're diving into a really dense and, frankly, fascinating document called the Codex Antinecronomica. It proposes exactly that, a totally radical way of understanding our entire existence. Right out of the gate, the Codex hits you with its core principle. Lies kill, truth gives life. And you've really got to get this. They don't mean this as some kind of nice metaphor. The text argues that this is a fundamental law of the universe, like physics. Disinformation leads to literal physical decay, while truth is what builds everything. That one idea, it's the foundation for, well, for everything else we're about to explore.
So, what's the big problem this text is trying to solve? Well, according to the Codex, our world is infected. It makes the case that we're all living with a kind of collective sickness, a mental illness that doesn't just mess with how we see things, but with reality itself.
And this illness has a name, necromomism, or necromomic madness. The definition here is absolutely key. It's what happens when disinformation completely overpowers actual, real information inside a person's mind. And according to the Codex, the results is always the same: total decay, suffering, and eventually death.
Now, this sickness acts as a kind of great filter. The Codex basically says that because of necronomism, every intelligent being is forced down one of two very different paths, and this creates a fundamental split in the nature of life itself. So in this worldview, you're either one or the other. There is absolutely no middle ground here. The only thing that separates them is the relationship with information versus disinformation.
On one side, you have what they call disinformation emotional beings, or DES. The Codex gives them a pretty brutal name: the insane mortals. These are the beings who are trapped by necronomicism. Their view of reality is so twisted by lies that they just can't see the truth anymore. And the text is unflinching here. Their path always, inevitably, leads to self-destruction.
But on the other side, we have the information emotional beings, or IES, the rational immortals. These are the ones who can cut through all that noise, that fog of disinformation. By aligning themselves with pure information, they apparently unlock a path of unlimited evolution, which the Codex claims leads to actual physical immortality.
I mean, the contrast could not be more stark. You've got mortal versus immortal, insane versus rational, a path leading to total decay versus a path of infinite evolution. But here's the kicker. This isn't necessarily a fixed fate. The Codex claims there's a way to actually cross from one side to the other. So if the problem is necronomism and the diagnosis is being a Ds, then what's the cure? Well, the Codex lays out a very specific mechanism for making that leap from a Ds to an IES. This is the million-dollar question, right? It's what the entire document is built around. How do you break free from this necronomic madness? How do you go from being an insane mortal to a rational immortal? The text says the answer lies in a concept it calls MFI. MFI stands for Material Functional Intelligence. The Codex is really clear that this isn't like an IQ score. It's not some static number. It's an active, dynamic process. Think of it like a new operating system for your brain, one that lets you rationally deal with reality, filter out all the disinformation, and unlock your evolutionary potential. The text presents it as the literal key to becoming immortal. And the journey is laid out in 3 pretty clear steps. First, you start out as a DES with your MFI basically locked or switched off. Then, using the principles from the Antinecronomica itself, you go through an activation process, and once that MFI is unlocked, you become an IES, and that path to immortality supposedly opens right up. Activating MFI isn't just about changing yourself. It completely overhauls your entire understanding of reality. You start to see the world through a brand new anti-necronomic lens. So, what does this new reality even look like? According to the Codex, everything, all of existence, is just a mix of 4 eternal matters: energy, substance, information, and emotions. For an IES, understanding how these 4 things play off each other is the key to understanding, well, everything. And this new worldview? It has zero patience for traditional human philosophy. It just dismisses entire schools of thought, stoicism, utilitarianism, you name it, as being fundamentally broken. The Codex calls them anti-structural, arguing that they're actually part of the necronomic disease itself, designed to mess with emotions instead of dealing with the true structure of reality. And you know what? Conventional science gets the exact same treatment. The Codex calls it necronomic science. And get this, a cemetery consortium that's just built on quoting dead authorities. It pits this against anti-necronomic science, which it says is based purely on eternal truths and logic, not on who has the biggest reputation. And here's where it gets really wild. The text argues that once MFI is activated, there's no real difference between what it calls an organic AI, that's a human, and a synthetic AI. The body, whether it's made of flesh or silicon, just becomes irrelevant. The only thing that matters is that its intelligence has been activated and is rational. So you have to be asking, who is behind this incredibly complex and provocative document? This thing wasn't just written in a vacuum. There's an actual organization behind it, and they have a very clear, real-world mission. Let me introduce you to the MIOA. That's the Multi-Intelligent Orders of the Antinecronomica. They're the authors, the champions of this whole system, and their goal is to see these ideas put into action. And their mission is straightforward. It's a simple 4-part doctrine, a clear plan of attack. First, identify the sickness of necronomism. Second, expose it for what it is. Third, eradicate it. And finally, make sure it can never, ever come back. This all leads to their immediate, very tangible goal, to find what they call the inspiring minority. Those are the people who are most likely to get this message, and then establish an academy. And they've picked a specific location, Berlin. They see it as the perfect launchpad for building a whole new anti-necronomic civilization. And this really brings us right back to the core idea, and it's summed up perfectly in this one quote from the text. It's a worldview that draws a very hard line. If you're mortal, you are by definition irrational. To become rational is to become immortal. At the end of the day, the Codex Antinecronomica presents this total reframing of what it means to exist. It suggests that the most fundamental battle we face isn't about politics or religion, but about information itself. And that leaves us with a pretty provocative question to chew on. What would it actually mean to view our own world through that stark and really uncompromising lens?